Deepam. How's it going, bro?
Hey Ketul, I'm doing good, man. How are you?
Doing fantastic. How's your day?
Not bad so far. Are you excited for this?
Absolutely. Everyone, welcome to the Your Life Unfiltered podcast with your hosts, Ketul Kothari and Deepam Jain. In this podcast, we are going to dig deep into the backgrounds and life experiences of our guests in order to connect the dots between their upbringing and what they're doing today. All right, let's kick it off. You know what's funny? In this podcast, we're doing East Coast meets West Coast because we have East Coast and West Coast, right? All right, so how did we come up with the idea of this podcast?
Ketul, do you remember we were hanging out in Sausalito a couple of months ago, chatting about different topics?
I do. That's actually an amazing story. I remember that was actually one of your favorite spots you've ever been to, right?
Yeah,
Right. I remember that city reminded you so much about Europe. I actually remember when we were in Sausalito, didn't we have that tradition? It's like every time you went to Sausalito, you had this tradition of always getting ice cream at that same spot and then walking around that waterfront area.
I know. I can tell you exactly how many times I've been there because of how many ice creams I've ate at the restaurant. It's a small bakery. It's called Lapart's, and it's just my favorite. I've tried all of their toppings, and I just love it, going there all the time. I'm so glad we came up with the idea of this there because we were just, talking about how many interesting people are around us and they have so many inspiring stories. And, maybe can come up with a platform where we can showcase all these stories and just put it out to the world to see and just learn from. So, yeah, here we are, 2 months later, recording live. I can't believe this is happening. I'm really excited. I'll also quickly cover why are we doing this. So, as I said, there's so many interesting people around us who have inspiring stories. It could be related to their work, personal life, side hustle, their passions, etc. And through this platform, we really hope to learn about their achievements, their inspirations, fears, setbacks, failures, everything that they've gone through in their life, the adversities, and so on. How did they get to where they are? And so we can learn from these learnings and hopefully emulate them in some way or fashion in our own lives and provide the insight to our listeners as well. Can you tell our listeners what they can expect from this podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's actually a very interesting idea that I know we came up with several months ago, and we're finally at this point of actually being able to implement against it. But the main takeaways for our listeners is we want them to be able to transform their perspectives about life in general and about what the future can hold by showcasing the stories of a lot of exceptional people, as you were mentioning, in order to understand if there was a single trigger or was it if there was a series of events that led them to have that inspiration to do some of the amazing things that they're doing today, whether that be stuff related to philanthropy, whether that be side hustles like businesses or passion projects, or even how much success or special projects they've done at work. So the whole idea is to get in their mindset for a little bit, understand what was their thought process going into those ventures, what is their thought process as you're conducting these ventures, and then finally what's next for them. We really want to dig deep into the backgrounds of these people and hopefully take away some fantastic perspectives and learnings from these people that we can maybe bring back into our own lives and ingrain into our thoughts, into our experiences, into our future aspirations. So that was the real reason for this podcast. And I'm so happy you asked that because I know when you and I were talking about this in Sausalito a few months ago, we absolutely love the topic. And we thought there was so much opportunity, ranging from topics about hypnosis versus magic versus psychology versus marketing, branding. I mean, we had so many
Mhm.
ideas and we wanted to bring in talent from so many disciplines to be able to showcase some of this and obviously learn from our guests in the process, right? It's always a bi-directional street where we want to both add value to our guests and at the same time learn from our guests and hopefully to our listeners as well.
Excellent. It's kind of funny to think about that. Typically, Silicon Valley is home to so many startup ideas. It's kind of home to our podcast idea as well. With that, why don't we start with our own introductions, Ketul? Why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners? Just share a little bit about where you're from, where you grew up.
Sure, absolutely. So, hi everyone, I'm Ketul Kothari. So, I was actually born and raised in the US, specifically in New Jersey. I was born in Paterson, New Jersey, lived in Passaic until I was 6 years old, and then moved to the town that I'm in currently, a small town in northern New Jersey. In terms of what I do today, I currently work as a management consultant at a management consulting company. and I am very happy to be back home. I actually lived in California for a little bit, and it was an amazing experience, met a lot of interesting people, but at the end of the day, I am really happy to be back home where all my family is. In terms of the environment that I grew up in, I actually grew up in a very white town, 95% white. So it was a very interesting experience being a
Hmm.
person of color growing up in a white town. But at the same time, although I grew up in a white town, I never felt disconnected to my culture, primarily because I went to Sunday school. I had a lot of outside of school and, you know, hometown experiences with a lot of brown people within the community. So even though I grew up in an entirely white town, I never felt completely disconnected to my culture, which is great because it actually sparked the interest in a lot of the stuff that I'm doing today, including being a volunteer on the Young Jain Professionals Board, which is a 501c charitable organization within the community that I was raised in. So that's been fantastic. In terms of where I went to school, I actually went to school in state at Rutgers University, a pretty big state university in the state of New Jersey. Went there for both my undergraduate degree and my graduate program. So for my undergraduate, I did finance and supply chain management. And then for my MBA, which
Mhm.
I completed during the pandemic, I double majored in supply chain and marketing. So basically hit all three of the biggest business disciplines out there. That's supply chain for business operations, finance for money management, and then
Mhm.
marketing for revenue optimization and revenue growth.
Wow. Wow, that
So
sounds so cool, man. I have no idea what that
yeah.
means, by the way.
Well, thank you so much for asking me to introduce myself. I wanted to ask the same question to you, Deepam. Tell the listeners a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Ketu. Well, I have had a little bit of a different upbringing than you. I'm originally from India. I was born and brought up in New Delhi, where I spent the first kind of majority of my life. I went to undergrad at the University of Delhi, pursued an undergrad in computer science. Right after that, I started working for a consulting firm, worked there for a few years, and then kind of moved to the US around 5 years ago to pursue my master's in business analytics at the University of Rochester in New York. And right after that, I started working at a consulting company where I work today, still today, as a data science consultant. So my role has been a little bit technical, always been a technical person. In terms of my upbringing, I grew up in a very modest family. Ketul, why don't you share with our listeners some of your passions? Like what do you like to do outside of your work, your personal life? Actually, personal life is part of your passion. So go for it.
That's actually a fantastic question, Deepam. Thank you so much for bringing that up. And it's interesting because I would say that I don't believe I have just one passion. If I had to sum it up in terms of a single passion, my passion is to basically continue to grow as a person and become a very multi-dimensional human being. And so I just really want
Hmm.
to live life to its fullest, right? So I want to be able to travel to many different cities, both domestically and internationally. I want to continue to meet very fascinating and interesting people. I want to continue to learn about a whole host of different topics, ranging from things such as magic, the whole concept of misdirection, how that can be applied to business, politics, marketing, etc. Learn so much about marketing and branding. Learn about supply chain, which is the industry that I'm currently consulting for. Learn about finance, tax. Learn about art. I just want to do everything basically. My passion. I would say just continue to grow as a human being.
That's awesome.
I don't want to be someone that is only good at one thing. There's actually a very famous quote which many people know, but they don't know the full quote, and that quote
Yeah.
is, "A jack of all trades is a master of none." But the real quote is, "A jack of all trades is a master of none, but always better than a master of one." And so when I heard that quote so long ago, it really stuck with me. And so ever since then, I've always tried to become more of a multi-dimensional human being where I don't want to just be good at one thing. I want to be great at many things. And to do that, you have to borrow and learn from many different aspects of life, many different disciplines, and kind of merge it together to have a very diverse perspective. And so since then, I've just been focused on experiencing so many different things, learning so many different things, learning about magic, branding, marketing, accounting, tax, finance, real estate, etc. Like basically any topic that I find even vaguely interesting, I go all in and try to learn about it.
Awesome. Fantastic answer. So, can you give us an example of where you combine one or more of these passions together, and it turned into something that you never expected it would be.
Absolutely. The best example is what we're going through right now, podcasts. So I was always great at communication growing up in terms of word choice, in terms of tonality, in terms of things like that. But I never really had an outlet to demonstrate that other than just through everyday conversation with people. And so a podcast was a great way for me to even refine that further, get to network as well, meet a lot of different people, which goes into my other passion of just experiencing life and getting new different kinds of experiences. And at the same time, I can hit my third passion, which is learning from other people. So getting multifaceted perspectives coming from the diverse guests we plan to bring onto the podcast. Fourth passion, marketing and branding, which of course, anything you launch, you're going to have to do a little bit of marketing and branding. And so a podcast was a great outlet for me to combine four of those different passions together, as well as spend some quality time with my good friend Deepam.
You know what? After you're done with the podcast, I might suggest you might consider becoming a politician as well, because you get to do all those things.
You're not wrong. That's actually true. That's true.
So anyway, and I want to tell our listeners that Ketul just to the Bay Area, where I live as well, a few months ago, sometime end of last year, and he started from like a 1 or 2% group where he knew a couple of people in the area, and he didn't know anybody else. And then he kept on meeting new people, and he formed a group. And over time, that group has grown into a size of 80 people, which is huge. And through that group only, I met Ketul. It's only been a few months since I've known you, so that tells you like how much trust we've been able to develop in such a short amount of time. That group itself, I made a lot of good friends. We hang out on a regular basis. We have a lot of fun together. It's an amazing group of people. Thank you, Ketul, for putting it together and for coming to the West Coast so we could do this.
Yeah, absolutely, of course, of course. And hey, we have the fruits of that effort right now with this podcast, and I'm sure this podcast with our combined efforts will absolutely crush it. I'm no doubt
Yeah,
in my mind, it'll absolutely crush
totally,
it.
totally. And hopefully we get to feature some amazing people on our platform. So through this show, we can just bring out their stories to the world. I know these days, especially coming out of the pandemic, we've had very limited social interaction. We hadn't had a chance to meet with so many new people because we were just stuck at home, all of us. So that'll be a huge, huge learning opportunity for everyone to get to know the amazing people just around them and just to hear their stories, which obviously are incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. I love everything you said there. 100% agree. I actually wanted to ask you that same question. What are some of your passions, and what steps have you started to do to be able to live out those passions?
That's a great question, obviously, since I asked it first.
Take all the credit.
Man,
It's all good. I don't need the credit.
for me, the answer is going to sound a little bit similar to you, but I think about it in a different way. For me, I am a big fan of novelty. Know? So I have a lot of passions. I wouldn't say passions, but I have a lot of interests. So music, for example, is one of the very things that I do on a regular basis. Then, I recently started learning how to produce music. So I love tinkering with the technology. I have learned how to edit videos. I have learned how to edit photos. I started a microblog on Tumblr. I don't know if anybody remembers. Tumblr used to be a
I remember
huge
Tumblr. I remember Tumblr.
microblogging website. I used to get I got a few thousand hits, so it wasn't not that substantial. And then related to that, I also shot a documentary on a lake in Delhi, which is called Hodgkas Lake. It got around 30,000 views on YouTube, which is, by I feel it's pretty huge by my standards because I have no experience shooting a documentary. I just wanted to do it. I just went about it, just shot it, uploaded it. Um, yeah, and here we are. So that's how I combined a couple of my passions, which is related to camera, photography, and just video shooting in general. So I seek novelty because that I feel fills my soul in a way. That makes sense. Pursuing new ideas just makes me excited. Recently, not recently, but in the last few years, I've discovered this whole set of kind of podcasts about psychology, economics, about Wall Street. And just those podcasts and those ideas have really changed my thought process even being. It made me kind of empathize with others, how other people think, what others' motivations are, and combining all of that in a novel fashion really kind of fills my life up, if that makes sense. And doing another or pursuing another novel opportunity with you, Ketul,
That is
starting a
simply amazing.
podcast. So really looking forward to it. I hope we get to take it to the next level.
You talk a lot about passions, right? And all the interesting stuff that you're doing and why you got into it. So for people that may not have discovered their passions yet, what would be your best advice for things they should do in order to find that passion?
No, Ketul, that's a fantastic question, and I get this all the time because for the longest time I have struggled with it myself. Because people ask me, "Hey, what's your passion?" and I don't have an answer to it because I do so many things. My advice to anybody who's struggling to find or kind of pinpoint to their passion is just really spend more time doing things that you really enjoy, right? It could be as simple as cooking or reading or walking. You don't have to have a passion as long as you're having fun doing the things that you like. It's okay if you don't really feel about doing it all the time. Even if you, let's say, if you just enjoy doing it like for 5 minutes a day, totally fine. Just do whatever makes you happy. Just don't bother about figuring out the fact that you need to have a passion in order to make it your worthwhile. So that's just my quick advice.
Great answer. That was fantastic.
So Ketul, why don't you tell our listeners what's next for you?
Yeah, absolutely. That is a great question. And my thought process is there's a couple of different things that I really want to do. So from a career perspective, I really, really like management consulting. So I want to continue to grow in management consulting. From a personal perspective, I am really loving the idea, the vision that we have for this podcast. So I want to expand this podcast until it becomes a top 10 podcast on Spotify. And I really want to get it to that point where we start for both of ourselves opening the doors for great opportunities, whether that be potential sponsorships, whether that be business opportunities. And the way that I view it is just as a function of building a deeper connection with all of our guests that are going to be on this podcast. We're going to learn about different things that they're doing, whether it's stuff in their personal lives, people they know, business ventures. And so if we build a very strong relationship with the right people, it actually opens up the door for us to be able to join some of these business opportunities that may come our way. And so the future for me is basically use the podcast as a platform, not just to enrich ourselves from a knowledge and experience and network perspective, but ultimately translate that into monetization opportunities, whether that be directly from the podcast or ancillary opportunities that get opened up as a result of the podcast. And so that's what I currently see as the future. And that's just one future. There's obviously other things as well. And that's, I continue to want to be in an opportunity to be able to volunteer and give back to communities. And so I'm definitely going to do some philanthropical ventures in the near future.
Wow, you really thought it through, man. I wish I could say the same. No, that's a great point, Ketul. I could not agree more with you. Obviously, this podcast is obviously I'm really looking forward to. I'm looking forward to speaking to many incredible people, which we're going to be inviting over the course of next few months. Building relationships with them, learning about their experiences and their life journeys, their setbacks. I think I really hope I can learn something from them, and this fits into the whole finding a novelty idea, where as we speak to more of these people, we'll just learn about different thought processes, different avenues, and so on, and which hopefully, again, as I said in the beginning, emulate in my own life and just really take it to the next level.
So, Deepam, I actually had so many questions to ask you about your recent birthday trip. And so,
Hmm.
for our viewers here that may not be aware, Deepam
Yeah.
actually spent about 3 weeks in Europe touring across multiple different cities in anticipation of a milestone birthday of his. And so, this is something he had been planning for months. He was on calls with overseas friends for a whole host of number of weeks in order to plan everything. And so I just wanted to hear from you, like, how was that experience, both from the planning perspective to actually being there, and
Yeah.
how do you feel being back after the entire trip?
Thanks, Ketul. I can't help but say that I'm a little bit nostalgic about it, even though it's just been a week since I've come back. But the whole process of planning this trip to going it's been fascinating. So it's all started around 3 months ago, where I just was speaking with a couple of my friends, and we'd been planning on and off for this trip, but it never actually ended up happening because of pandemic and other issues. But this time, I was determined to make it happen. So I got on a call with a couple of my friends. One of them lives in India. One of them he just moved to Amsterdam, and just we started figuring out the logistics. It just took us just 1 month to really plan it, because Europe obviously is such a huge country. So you have to figure out where to go, how to find the visas, and book the tickets, hotels, everything. It's a huge time taking process. I was really exhausted by the end of the second week when I was planning it, but I knew that the rewards are going to be more than enough to make it worthwhile. Okay, once we figure out the logistics, it's just a matter of going there and having the fun, which obviously we did. And quickly summarize, I went to Paris, Amsterdam, Belgium, as well as Spain, and last day I was in Portugal and Lisbon. All of the countries are absolutely, absolutely fascinating. They have the incredible amount of culture, food. There is so much to see. The cities are beautiful. The old towns are gorgeous. You can just stroll around, just keep looking at the different buildings and just not get enough of it. As I said, I was totally immersed in the entire experience. And on the day of my birthday, it's kind of midnight. We actually were in Spain. So this is an amazing story. So what really happened was we had gone for this live show, and we came across this family who's originally from Sevilla, which is the birthplace of flamenco, which is a traditional Spanish dance form. It's actually not dance, it's just dance and music form. And the entire family, which basically had like two kids, two sons, three daughters, they just were so immensely talented that they performed live flamenco for us. First of all, I could not understand a word of it, but I was so engrossed in it. I was just entranced in it. I was trying to kind of really take it all in. Like I was witnessing this live. And then once the show got over, the performers actually did private concert for us, because they really wanted to have fun. They really wanted to showcase their talent. They wanted to sing a song, a couple, and we were just hanging around afterwards. And it's just one of the most beautiful experiences of my life. I would just not trade it for anything else. And I'm so glad and so fortunate to be able to do this. And yeah, and share it with you all. Thanks, Ketul, for asking that question.
Yeah, absolutely. That is fantastic. That sounds like such a beautiful experience. I hope one day I'm able to do something like that.
For sure. For sure. Hey, Ketul, do you want to share your experience living in the Bay Area? Remember having this discussion with you where I asked you, hey, why are you here? Like, what are you doing? This, are you moved and so on? I didn't know back then you were just there temporarily. I know you lived most of your life on the East Coast. So can you just share something with our listeners? What was your experience in Bay Area?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me actually talk you through my thought process first. And so my thought process is that I lived my entire life in the state of New Jersey, never really lived outside of the state of New Jersey. And so I thought that because I was working remotely, because I was still unmarried, it was a great opportunity for me while I had very little commitments and obligations to get the experience of living in a completely new environment. And so I thought, I don't want to live in New York City because I already know what the lifestyle there is like. It's not going to be something drastically different. And so if I wanted to do this of living in a complete new city, I wanted to be someplace very, very different from the place that I grew up. And so I thought, let me choose an area that is far enough away that I'm going to get a very different experience, but where I also know a handful of people and have some family members. And so I ultimately decided upon the San Francisco Bay Area because I do have a couple of relatives there. So I had a first cousin,
Hmm.
a second cousin, and an uncle that live in an area. And so I thought this is a fantastic place to give it a shot, right? Get the experience of living in a new city. Um, Also to enjoy the weather there and the natural beauty of California. So I actually moved around the winter time frame on the East Coast. So I actually, because of the timing of when I decided to move, I got to avoid a brutal winter. So that was amazing. So the timing worked out from that perspective. And I absolutely loved it. So one of the best things about living in California for me was the fact that I was still working East Coast hours while living on the West Coast. And so although I had to wake up very early for work calls and attending all of that, what was fantastic is I also finished early. So after work hours, so I usually wrapped up around 2 p.m. Pacific, right? Or 5 p.m. Eastern. And so because I wrapped up at 2 p.m. Pacific, I had so much time after work hours to explore, meet new people, check out new places. And so it's a fascinating story, but I actually got to do some stuff that people that were born and raised in California have never actually had the chance to do because of the hours. So a great example of that is the Pulgas Water Temple. So it is this
Hmm.
beautiful Renaissance style architecture that's in some ways like a watered down version of the Palace of Fine Arts in proper San Francisco in the Marina District. But the hours of this Pulgas Water Temple is actually only open during work hours, Monday through Thursday, not even Friday, Monday to Thursday from 10 a.m. to about 3 p.m. And so many people have never actually visited, even if they were born and raised in California, because first they had school, then they had, work, and unless they took a special day off to do a special trip to Pocahontas Water Temple, they just didn't get a chance to go. But because of my work hours, I was able to actually check it out doing work hours and got the experience of seeing this beautiful architecture which many people haven't seen. So that was one fascinating idea. And then, of course, there was a whole experience with building out a network there, which was partially my mindset going there was I wanted to make the most of the limited time I had there. And to do that, I had to do a couple different things. The first thing is I had to diversify my experiences of meeting a whole host of completely new people to get that proper experience of living in California, understanding the way people think, how they communicate, how they socialize there, understanding all that stuff. And to do that, there's two things I had to do. One, I had to meet more people. And second thing is I had to find a way to centralize staying in contact with them. And so you mentioned before of, creating this group that grew from a handful of people up to 80 people. And part of the reason I was actually able to make that happen is because it was very, very intentional. I went out of my way to meet as many people as possible. And anyone that I found very interesting that was a fascinating person, I actually added them to this centralized WhatsApp group that I created. And the key to that is that I didn't want any awkward situations where I asked someone for the contact info and some people, since they don't know you that well, they feel uncomfortable with that. So I actually made it super, super easy in there, made it seem very casual in the sense that I had a QR code that they could scan and join the group. And so I made it very easy for them to join. And then I was extremely focused on keeping everyone engaged because I wanted them to continue to come out to different events and stuff, hang out, do different activities because part of it was a selfish reason, but at the same time, it's also a selfless reason. Selfless is I connected people that normally may not have never been in contact with each other. So that was a selfless aspect, connecting people together. The selfish component of that was I was doing it because I didn't want to be bored. I wanted to have a good time as well. So, I mean, I feel like many things, like
Yeah,
many selfless things, always also have a selfish component to it, even if it's as simple
yeah,
as you're doing selfless things because you want to feel good about yourself. So
absolutely.
I think no matter what it is, you can't ever say someone is fully selfless because if in
Hmm.
many cases they're doing selfless things because it makes them feel better, which is selfish, right?
Absolutely. And it's just a really fascinating thing that you combined a core tenet of marketing, which is reduce friction. So you reduce the friction from people's lives, just having a QR code, just scan it, do your thing. And if you want, you can join and be part of the group frictionless. So that's
Ab-
amazing, man.
I never thought of that, but you bring up a very good point. That's actually really true. It's you want to remove those barriers. And so one of those barriers is like, for example, if someone wants to purchase something, make it very easy for them to buy it. That's like the simplest thing you can do.
Exactly. Exactly. And I just want to say one more thing. So the temple you mentioned, you know what? I'll be honest with you, I've never even heard of it. I've been living in the Bay Area for the last 4 years. I have no idea what this temple is. Obviously, I never get got a chance to go there. I don't will because it's never
You can
gonna be
take a day
open.
off. It's worth the trip. You can take a day off. So it's actually in Redwood City. So for those of you
Mhm.
that don't know, Deepam actually lives in proper San Francisco, not the general Bay Area, the proper San Francisco. I believe it's in near Market Street. Is that correct?
Yeah, lower hate.
Okay, yep.
Hmm.
And so Pocus Water Temple is actually in Redwood City, which is directly south of San Francisco. So it'd be like a 30-minute commute for you if you wanted to ever check it out. But
All right.
absolutely worth it. It's a beautiful temple, absolutely peaceful. If you go during the earlier parts of the morning, around 10 a.m., 11 a.m., there's no one there. So it's probably a place you can actually even meditate. It's a beautiful spot. Very nice. There's like a water, there's like a reflective pool in front of the Pocus Water Temple, kind of like the Taj Mahal, how they have the water pool. So it's
Hmm.
like that. And then there's like some beautiful, well maintained grass all around. So you can literally, meditate on the grass if you wanted to. It's definitely a very peaceful spot.
Excellent. Well, think about it. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to take a day off, just switch off from my work and just go there, have fun, and meditate, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, Deepam has said he hasn't done some of those things, but he's also done a lot of travel within San Francisco. So to toot his horn a little bit, he has seen basically every trail that exists in California, specifically in Northern California. He's visited places like Mirror Woods. He's done a lot of activities. So I know last week, oh, actually this weekend, you actually just went go-karting too, if you want to share that story.
Yeah, yeah, no. So again, I'm just continuing your legacy, Ketul, here in the Bay Area. So the group that you'd created, as I said, I've made some good friends there. So we just every week or every other weekend, we just kind of go out and do some fun stuff. Well, this last weekend, this is my first week coming back from Europe. Went to go karting. Actually, it was yesterday. We went to go karting, and one of the most fascinating experiences I've ever had in my life. I think I found my new passion.
See,
I'm
now
gonna
you
be
need to
doing a
get a
little bit
vehicle.
more.
That's what you need now. So because Deepam lives in San Francisco, he doesn't have a car, but I think this is the inspiration for him to get his car.
I know, I know. And you know what? I've driven quite a lot in the last few days. So I've driven in Belgium and Netherlands as well as in Spain. We did a road trip there. Definitely considering buying a car now. But I think I might still stick with go-karting for the timing because you don't have to hit brakes when you're go-karting. You just keep driving. Just put foot on the pedal and just don't hit any. So it was a fun experience yesterday. We had a lot of fun.
Awesome. That sounds absolutely amazing.
All right. What is your personal takeaway from the pandemic?
That is a very, very good question. And I think the takeaway is that you only realize how much you crave social connection once that's been withheld. I think that's the main takeaway. And so when you're living a normal life and you're already having social interactions, whether that be with coworkers, with family that don't live with you, or with friends, etc., you don't realize how important that social connection is, just being social. And in general, I would say human beings are social creatures with very few exceptions. And so the biggest takeaway was that I didn't realize how important social connection actually was to people in terms of their energy levels, in terms of what makes them feel alive, until that was withheld. What that meant
Hmm.
essentially is that when in person social connection is withheld, you find other means to continue to have social connection. And one of the biggest things that happened during the pandemic is that a bunch of friends and I started to host virtual game nights and virtual talks and all that kind of stuff, primarily because we weren't able to meet in person, but we still craved that social connection.
I'm sure a lot of us will agree with you there because I think we've all of us have felt that at some point or the other that social interaction just really helps you keep things in perspective and just keep you grounded, that you belong, and all of those things that makes you human. And once that's taken away, it's just loss of perspective just really becomes a rabbit hole and just you kind of start sinking in. I'm probably sharing my own experience because I struggled with it quite a bit when I was stuck at home for like a better part of 2020. I had my roommates and we were hanging out. We had Friday movie nights and Saturday runs and so on, but it still wasn't enough to get going for such a long time.
I actually want to ask you the exact same question. So the pandemic was really, really hard on a lot of different people. During that entire experience, what was the biggest takeaway that you had?
Personally, pandemic turned out to be something I never expected from me. I learned a lot of new things. I learned how to play guitar. I actually published a couple of blogs on Medium, got a couple thousand hits, not too much, but just enough to keep me going. Then I got a lot into fitness during the pandemic. I started eating clean, started running, doing exercise. So I started walking quite a bit as well. So for me personally, it turned out to be a huge, huge learning, and I transformed as a human being in many ways. Obviously, at the same time, I was longing that social connection that you mentioned, which in the beginning wasn't that a big of a deal, but as the time went on, it just started to take a toll on my mental health, and I just really couldn't do the things as much as I was able to do initially. So it started to take a mental toll, and just but in the beginning, it was amazing for me.
So Deepam, you talked a lot a bit about all this exercise you had been starting to pick up during the pandemic. I do remember that you were telling me a little bit about this monthly step competition that you were involved in by one of our mutual
Hmm.
friends, Sunny Jain. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? Not just about
Yeah.
the walking competition, but also what got you involved in it, how you kept consistent about it, all that type of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, Ketul. So, as I said, I really picked up physical activity during the pandemic, and it helped me get through through the day because once you do some sort of physical activity, it just helps you with shave off some of the tension that you've been building, and you just take a walk. It just really help you kind of find that mental clarity. For me, how I kept at it is just by just taking one step at a time. So I knew that I have to spend at least 30 minutes a day exercising, whether it's just a simple walk or whether it's just a bit of a light exercise. So I bought weights at home so that I don't have to go out to the gym, at least in the beginning of pandemic, that things were not open enough. So I bought weights at home so I could just find time in between my meetings, just do exercise and just record a couple of circuits and then just go do my thing. I also automated a lot of my eating, right? So like the food that I'm making, I made a calendar of what I'm gonna eat every week of the day. Obviously, it's not a strategy that's gonna work for everyone, but it really worked for me because I didn't really have the time to think about what I'm gonna eat 3 times a day because I made a calendar. I knew what exactly I'm gonna eat. I'm gonna be eating that certain day for lunch and for dinner and so on. And that made time for me to do other things. So once I automated my food habits, I had all this time to do other things. So walking, for example, I live in SF. It's a beautiful city. I'm so lucky to be living here. And I could just, after work, I just go out, start walking to go to the nearby park, talk to a friend while at it, or listen to a podcast, the usual stuff. So I just had to take one step every day. I just had to kind of push myself, and I did some accountability measures as well. So I bought a calendar where I could mark, what exercise did I do on a certain day? Did I do intermittent fasting that day or not? Did I write the number of steps? I used some devices to hold me accountable, which really helped me record things and track my progress over time. And obviously, I kept building on it. And as you said, I was able to hit 15,000 steps a day, which was by the end of it, it was not that big of a deal because I was just, I was going to the gym in the morning, coming back, and I would hit like, let's say, 7,000 steps, and then I'll take a walk in the evening for like 40 minutes, and then hit the rest of it. So it was just small things combined all together that just really helped me.
That's actually super interesting though, because you actually hit upon some really amazing topics that I wanted to dig a little bit deeper into. So one is intermittent fasting. So I know intermittent fasting is a really big thing that a lot of people are doing now as a way to manage their weight or to get in shape, etc. And so I guess one question I had is how do you learn about intermittent fasting and how has it helped you personally?
I learned about it through my friends who've been doing it for the longest time. But for me, again, being at home, it was really easy to plan my meals because I can eat at, let's say, 6 in the evening, and then I don't have to worry about my dinner all evening. 6 to 11, I have all the time to do whatever I want. And then in the morning, when I come back from the gym, or just recently been going to the gym, but last year I was just working out at home. I would just eat at 10 a.m. So that would be like a 16-hour kind of intermittent fasting that I would do. So it really helped me keep my weight, first of all, keep me in shape. I almost got six packs. I was this close. It's really hard to kind of shave off that belly fat, but that was one of my goals that also helped me keep at it. It helped me keep energy levels up because if you're not eating, you don't have food in your stomach, the energy goes towards other parts of the body, brain, help me energized. Yeah, and it was overall, it made me feel really, really good. I was able to perform at my work. I got a promotion last year. So a
Congratulations,
lot of the
that's
good things.
amazing. Yeah, and actually, you brought up a very interesting point, and that interesting point is you mentioned when you do intermittent fasting, the energy that's normally used in the process of digestion is able to be redirected in other places, right? And it's actually a fascinating concept because, you know, fasting in general, a lot of people view it as a way to basically be a recipe to not maintain all the nutrients that you should, right? But what a lot of
Hmm.
people overlook is that there's a lot of real scientifically proven benefits to fasting, even whether it's
Hmm.
intermittent or like a whole day fast. And
Hmm.
one of the things exactly that you mentioned that when the body is not spending so much energy in the process of digestion, because digestion does consume a lot of energy, it's actually able to redirect the energy in terms of cellular repair, overall energy levels, repairing mitochondrial efficiency, all these different things. And so there's actually a lot of benefit just outside of weight loss and that kind of stuff, maintaining weight. There's actually a lot of benefit from a epigenetic aging perspective when it comes to intermittent fasting, which I think a lot of people either don't understand or have not taken the time to really dig deeper into.
Yeah,
There was
yeah,
one other
absolutely.
thing I wanted to bring up, and you
Hmm.
mentioned the whole concept of basically meal prepping, right? Well, not exactly meal prepping, but planning your meals in advance.
Hmm.
And that too is actually a very interesting topic because you guys may have heard the whole idea that there are some presidents that wear the same color suit all the time because of the whole concept that it's one less decision that they make during the day. And I think that also applies to the example that you brought up that there's actually a concept of mental load or cognitive load and decision fatigue, right? They're all similar concepts. And the whole idea there
Hmm.
is that in a day, there's only so many decisions you can make. And so when you take out some of that decisions that you're making throughout the day, it conserves your mental energies to be able to do other things or other activities. And so in your particular case, because you prepped out week by week for a month, roughly an idea of what you're going to eat every single day, that was one less decision you had to make, or maybe multiple, because you have multiple meals in a day, right? A couple less decisions you had to make every single day, which meant that you now have the time and that energy to redirect that to walking or to do something other activity, right? Maybe it was getting another half-hour session in on practicing the guitar or learning about podcast and audio editing or whatever you were doing at that time. But it
Yeah.
allowed you to get so much more energy to focus on those things instead of focusing on figuring out what am I going to make? Do I have the right ingredients in terms of groceries to make those products and all that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. That is spot on. Is exactly how I was thinking about it. Just reducing the amount of decisions I have to make every day and automating as many things as possible, at least from the meal side. I do want to call out that this strategy may not work for everyone because I know food is a it's one of the most critical part of people's lives, and everybody has a different relationship with food. I do enjoy eating novel meals as well, but I used to keep that for weekends. Okay, so on during the weekdays my life was really, really predictable, but on the weekends I was allowed to be a little bit loose with my food. I don't want to mention that. So yeah, even I can't keep eating the same things again and again. It's just like a weekly basis. I will repeat things. So, but yes, you're exactly right.
That is amazing because like a lot of concept you're bringing up, I've thought about, but I've never actually gone ahead and fully implemented. And it seems like you've actually gone ahead and implemented some of those ideas in practice, which is fascinating stuff. Fascinating stuff.
Yeah, I do want to add one more thing, which I recently realized is a lot of us are actually, when we do our annual health checkup, we will see, flag vitamin D low and vitamin D deficiency. It's one of those things which is take it for granted that hey, everybody is vitamin D deficient and so on. Like, what's the point? Everybody's living their lives anyway. I did differently this year. Just a chance encounter. I obviously I had a vitamin D deficiency, but also B12. I started eating those two vitamins, and what I have noticed lately is that my energy levels are actually even better than they were last year. I didn't realize how much vitamins contribute to your daily energy levels. I used to be a little bit sleepy after lunch last year when I was not eating these, but this year it's just a totally different ball game. I'm at the top of my game just by just eating these tablets once a day. And for our listeners, I just want to say, like, at least I maintain a tracker. I use an app. It's called Streaks. Streaks is an app where you can add activities and can basically assign how often do you want to track it. So let's say I have 12 activities that I have to do on a periodic basis. One of them is practicing a guitar. So I practice guitar 5 times in a matter of 2 weeks. So I've basically laid it out like that. And you can track your activities through that app, just as an example. And I track my vitamins activity, and I know that hey, I've taken vitamins on a certain day. But feel free to use the mechanism that works for you. This works really well for me. I can track all my activities in one app. Again, I don't want to over engineer this too much. It's just whatever works for you. So I just want to call out for our listeners that I'm not getting paid to promote this particular app. We have no affiliation. We don't get any sponsorship, any monetary benefits. It's something that I use personally. It works really well for me. And if it works for you, by all means, please feel free to go for it.
So, Deepam, we're now going to get
Mhm.
into my favorite section of this podcast, and that is rapid fire round.
All
So,
right.
in this session, we're going to ask a series of questions, and the expectation is that you answer these as quickly as possible, just so we can get to learn a little bit about you, and let's see how good you do in this. Are you ready?
Bring it on.
All right. So, first question is coffee or tea,
I want to say tea,
taco or pizza,
pizza.
blue or red,
Tricky question. A blue. Mm-hmm.
action movies or comedy,
Ooh, depends. If I have to pick one, I'll pick comedy.
Marvel or DC,
You're making my life so difficult, dude. You're gonna make me enemies with a lot of people here, but I want to say Marvel for
it's going to get even worse. Ready?
now.
San Francisco or New York?
Ooh, San Francisco every day
For okay,
because I live
Ferrari,
here. I love the
Ferrari
city.
or Lamborghini?
Both.
You can't do that. You can't do that, bro. No, no both. No both. Gotta pick one.
Ferrari.
All right. Thank you for that. That was interesting.
Wow, thanks. Yeah, you really got me thinking there. Oh man. Okay. All right, my turn. My turn.
All right,
I
let's
have
do this.
yeah. What is your biggest pet peeve?
My biggest pet peeve. So, my biggest pet peeve is when someone actually uses too many filler words. So I'm fine with a couple here and there, but like if someone is speaking in the sense of, I believe that
Like,
like that people should like if they talk like that, that is my pet peeve. I cannot listen to that person. I'm just like zoned out at that point, and I'm like, come on, get
mm,
the message, like spit it out already. That's what I would say is my biggest pet peeve. Like I could deal with a decent amount, like if you use it here and there, but there are some people that use it. They use filler words more than use regular words, and that's just too much.
totally understandable. All right, moving on to the next one. Mountains or beaches?
Definitely beaches.
Hmm. Morning person or night owl?
100% night owl. So I don't know if you know or not, but if I can help it, I wake up at the absolute last minute in the mornings, even for work calls. So if I have a call at 9:30, I'm waking up at 9:25. If I have a call at 10 o'clock, I'm waking up at 9:55. So I am definitely not a morning person. It's actually funny because even though I was not a morning person, when I lived in the Bay Area, I still woke up early. Like I wake up early if I have to, but I do not look forward to it.
I'm sure most of us will agree with you right away. What's your favorite comfort food?
Nachos. Definitely nachos.
Mm, nice.
Oh, and one more, popcorn. I could eat popcorn every day. If it wasn't unhealthy to eat like the most buttery popcorn every single day, I would eat it every day.
Oh man, I feel hungry already. Okay, what's your favorite virtue in others?
Authenticity, specifically radical authenticity. So, I mean, there's a lot of fake people in this world. There's a lot of selfish people in this world. There are a lot of, and don't get me wrong, there are a lot of genuine people, a lot of selfless people as well. But my
Hmm.
favorite trait would be radical authenticity, where someone is just true to their core. They say what they think. They're not gonna pretend to be someone that they're not. That basically genuinely cares and wants to learn about other people. People like that just basically sometimes you can just tell with having a conversation with someone that this person is genuine down to the core. They're not being a politician, they're not sugarcoating it, they're just being genuine. And that's my favorite trait of all time.
Wow, that's very noble of you. Okay, that's actually it. I don't have a rapid fire question, but I do have one more question for you, which is, what is your biggest accomplishment in the last 1 year that you would like to share with our listeners?
The last 1 year, I think I may have
Or you
actually
can go
answered
back
that
a little bit
already.
more. Yeah,
Yeah,
if you
I
can
mean,
go back a bit more.
there's a couple things that I am very proud of. And one of those is I did get published as an author at a relatively young age. So when I was in my final years of college, I actually published a book on investments. It's called Invest Your Way to Riches. It's actually available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, basically every bookseller online that you can think of. It's distributed through those platforms. You can just search my name and you'll find that. So that would be one of the biggest accomplishment, mainly because of my age. The other thing is, I would say, just living in a new city, which is more recent, switching to management consulting, joining Young Jain Professionals, which is a charitable organization, so it's giving back to the community. A whole host of little things. I would say I, apart from all the different accomplishments, quote unquote, I'd say the biggest thing was just for me, the biggest accomplishment was just growing as an individual. So holistically, with whether that's from a knowledge perspective, from a degree perspective, so I got my MBA over in 2020, so relatively recently. Learning and ingraining things that I've learned from other people, just in general, growing as an individual being, adding value to other people. That's what I would consider my biggest non-career oriented accomplishment.
Very good. Yeah, perfect answer. 10 on 10.
Thank you so much.
All right, that's it from me.
Well, thank you, Deepam, for joining this podcast with me and co-hosting this. I know this was the first of hopefully many episodes. It was an absolute blast learning even more about you than I know already, as well as some spending some quality time with you over here over the phone. In terms of the next episodes, what is the one thing that absolutely inspires you in terms of what you expect to happen in the next episode as we bring in external guests?
So obviously we'll have a much more interesting perspective than the two of us can bring to the table. So that's definitely number one. We will have some unheard stories that most of us will find really, really fascinating. And I'm really looking forward to sitting down with our guests and just talking to them with you. Obviously, we're going to be doing this together. So I'm looking forward to that. And hopefully, frequency is going to be fixed in like a couple of iterations as we figure out our way through this novel venture that we are pursuing. So we'll let our listeners know once we have anything else to share. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right, great. Well, thank you all for all listeners that have tuned in. We hope you had an amazing time on this podcast, learned a lot from the two of us, hopefully got inspired by some of our thoughts, perceptions, and experiences. If you guys would be so kind as to follow our page on Instagram, Your Life Unfiltered, that would be absolutely appreciated, as well as share to anyone you think may be interested. Again, I can't emphasize enough for new podcasters. Engagement is key. So if you guys can like, subscribe, share, whatever you can do would be greatly appreciated. Thank you everyone for listening in, and I wish you all a fantastic day. Take care.
Take care, everyone.